Welcome, and this is Jacqueline. I manage multi businesses, and I am not self-made, I am God-made. And today we are going to talk about God and business. So we learned that God formed the earth and the heavens together with the systems of the world. So God, in His wisdom, formed all systems of the world, but what the end result of what we are seeing today, where the systems of the world have failed us, is because of what happened in Genesis 4, where after Cain rebelled against God, the Bible tells us that he left and went to form his own civilization, and which grew to a point where during Noah's time, there was so much wickedness that God had enough and decided to wipe them out. So we learn that civilization or systems of the world was corrupted from the root of Cain. So corruption started early in Genesis 4, whereby a rebel left and went to start his own civilization. So it was formed under a man's wisdom with assistance of the enemy, who was the one who was engineering the systems of the world. So the systems of the world can be formed in part of governance and systems such as business and trade, and all these systems were God's original plan. But what we see now is a result of corruption and what the enemy has planted so as to keep us further and further away from God. The blueprint of trade and economy is from God, and we see on how He established it through people who He led them into trade and businesses. So we see God establishing trade through Abraham, because Abraham was very rich, through his son Isaac, through Jacob, and throughout the history of the Israelites, where they traded a lot of things, a lot of valuable things. And we can also see through Solomon, who became very rich because of trade, whereby he had a lot of things to trade and resources such as horses, gold, and every other thing that was valuable at that time. And he traded and he became very wealthy. So trade is in the system of God. So yes, because I think what had been corrupted for a long time is that Christians or believers of Christ were not to engage in any form of trade. But it's not true, because trade and business are systems of God. It's in His original plan, and as God is restoring us into His glory, it means that He's establishing systems of trade and business in His original blueprint. We are going to learn about how God used demand and supply to create dominance of His people in the business and trade aspects in the times of Genesis. So demand and supply are the pull and push in business and economy, because where there is demand, it means that it will attract supply. So in Genesis chapter 26, we read of the story of Isaac. So Isaac, it came to a time of famine, whereby famine in the land of Canaan, and the place where they could get food and other resources was in Egypt, because we also learn in the story of Abraham, when God called him out of where he was and into Canaan. Into Canaan, immediately after he arrived in Canaan, there was famine, and so he journeyed to Egypt to get food. So this time it happens as in the time of Abraham, whereby there was severe famine in the land of Canaan. But interesting, God tells Isaac, who was already in the journey through Philistines into the land of Egypt. So he was already journeying to Egypt because now he was camping at the Philistines' land, which was the route to Egypt. And God encounters him and tells him that I do not want you to go to Egypt. I want you to stay in the land of the Philistines. And here I will confirm my covenant with Abraham. Because so now if you were in Isaac's shoes, your ancestors, when they entered Canaan and had encountered a period of famine, they went to Egypt and they were preserved. But now there's another famine, and God is telling you not to go to Egypt, but stay in the land of the Philistines. So I'm sure he was he was in shock, because now how is he going to sustain his descendants? How is he's going to sustain his household? As you know, they were rich people, so it means that they had a number of household people who were dependent on him. So God tells him to stay in the land of Canaan. And in that year, it says that he planted, and his seed harvested 100-fold of whatever he planted. And through that, he was able to trade and become the wealthiest man in the land of the Philistines, that the king was threatened and he had to kick him out of his country because he was extremely wealthy. So God used demand and supply to give Isaac dominance in the area of trade, and for him to create wealth of a nation, because there was demand, there was severe famine, but God gave him grace and favor for him to plant, and in that famine, he was able to harvest 100-fold. So some people believe that God had revealed to him the systems of irrigation, or just any other system where he was able to cultivate 100-fold in a land where there was declared famine. So God uses demand and supply in his favor for him to give dominance to his people in terms of trade. And the other aspect of dominance in trade, we can learn it in Genesis chapter 47, whereby from verse 13, God gives Joseph the upper hand in trade, whereby the previous chapters we learned that Pharaoh had a dream, whereby Joseph translated the dream into seasons of abundance and seasons of severe famine. And the strategy or plan that Joseph came up with through the assistance of the Holy Spirit was that you need to save as much as possible. You need to store up the abundance so that we can have the upper hand when famine hits. So we come to Genesis 47, we learn that they traded livestock, they traded with money, they traded with slaves. So people were ready to be slaves just to have food in exchange for whatever Joseph was offering. So Joseph had supply, and God created severe demand, whereby he was able to acquire extreme wealth for Pharaoh. So that is how God dealt with demand and supply in Genesis. So we learn that through Genesis 27 and Genesis chapter 47. So God has the upper hand to create systems of demand and supply, whereby he creates severe demand and then favors his people to have the supply for it, so that he can create dominance of us in the systems of the world, whereby right now God is, I know he's calling a lot of people to get out of their comfort zone and start to advance and take ownership and dominance in various areas of the systems of the world, various sectors. So God will give you what is needed, and he will create the demand for it. So yeah, that is good in business, because he has the upper hand to control the weather, to control every other natural occurrence of things, and he will give you the favor for you to have the supply for it. So in this season, if God is calling you to plant, even though there is a famine, just plant, because a time will come whereby you will reap 100-fold, and there will be extreme demand for whatever you are offering. And if God is calling you to store up as much as possible, if in terms of acquire that degree, acquire that skill, just store up as much as possible, because there will be a time whereby there will be a severe need for whatever you're offering, and God will give you the upper hand to have the supply and dominance in trade. So that is God in business, and thank you. See you on another video.